I'm not finding the share screen. And without the share screen, I'm hard pressed to put the introduction in front of you.
Paul, it should be at the bottom of your screen with a arrow pointing up, a green square.
Well, I've got the icons blocking me from seeing that, I think. And so here I am.
Sometimes, Paul, it's too big for my screen and I have to scroll it to see the icons at the bottom.
Well, I'm trying to move it to scroll and I'm not getting it to there. I got to move. Okay, now then. But now I took it all the way off. Oh boy. How do I get those things to move? Curious how often, after all 5 years, I still haven't learned to navigate this thing better than I have. Well, let me see if I can't pull up.
You might click on your full window button at the top right also. That sometimes will do it.
Well, if you can hear me, let me just go ahead and introduce our speaker and offer a prayer and we'll move on. You can't hear me, I presume? I hope I am being heard.
Yes,
Okay.
we hear you.
All right. Frederick Gaydusek is our speaker this evening. He's a regular contributor and sometimes teacher at the Stone Church Sunday afternoon Book of Mormon class and roundtable. He has previously presented on what the Book of Mormon scripture readily says about the Gentiles. His devotion to the Book of Mormon scripture readily appears in conversation, in his efforts to promote it among the First Nations people, and in the fluency he has in relating various aspects of the book. He addresses us this evening on a 1770s manuscript with the Book of Mormon implications. And so I ask for you to give him our attention, good questions, and appreciation for the research that he's done. Let us pray together. Our appreciation of your creation, O God, expands as our perception of your creation grows from the Milky Way to a multiverse of galaxies in which we are infinitesimally small. To comprehend light years, dark holes, photons, birth of stars, and yet you see fit to recognize us, even individually, our names to call. To be cognizant of your plan that we may participate in and beyond 4 dimensions, to exist beyond death with you in the realm of spirituality. Places us again in awe that you created us, gave us life, choices to determine our relationships in immortality. This evening, as we look at notes from history, challenging us to appreciate cultural connections, obscure, largely unknown, we ask your blessing to help us keep the body of truth, the facts from which our history has grown, and lay aside our traditions built to make us great, disparaging the marginalized, to make room for new information, to be evaluated, some discarded and some prized. And bless our presenter, Brother Gaydusek, as he offers a unique glimpse of the past, and our participants that the amicable tradition of this forum can be manifest as additional facts and perspectives are amassed. May we, through our forum, continue to listen and respond to your divine call to embrace the teachings of the Prince of Peace, whose guidance to the promised land invites and entices us all. Rick, the floor is open for you. I think I've gotten out of the way and delighted to have you available to present it to us again. And it was delightful just simply reconnect with you in the Stone Church Sunday afternoon meetings. And so now we've got you back on the forum. I welcome you back with this presentation.
Right. Can everyone hear me?
I hear you.
Okay, that's one. That's all I need. There we go. Almost scared me there. Okay, I need to get rid of this sidebar. Show full meeting. Maybe I can keep it. Okay. If you're seeing a red colored book, then you're seeing my screen share. So is that coming through for everyone?
Yes, however, it is small.
That's why, yes, it is, or no, it's not.
It is there, but it's small. We see Adairs History of the American Indians, but it's
Yeah.
small, comparatively small print.
It's big on my screen. I wonder.
Not small to me, Paul.
It's big enough for me.
Okay.
It's big on my screen.
Okay. I don't know what I can do to make it big for you, Paul.
Go ahead. If other people are seeing it, that's good.
Okay. So I was introduced to this book probably 30 years ago, maybe 25 or so, after I received the Book of Mormon. And so I bought several of them because I wanted to give them to people that were interested in this, the connection or the story that Adair records in this book. Okay, and so it has a little bit of history before we get it. I guess I'll just wait till I get to that slide. So the title, as you see there, Samuel Cole Williams is the editor. It was edited under the auspices of National Society of Colonial Dames of America in Tennessee. You can read it online. It's kind of hard because of the old text from the 1775, but it's readable. I mean, I looked at it online to see if I could see if it was searchable, but it wasn't. So the inside cover says first published in 1930, and there's the Library of Congress catalog card number. So several different covers it's had over the years. There you see some more and some more. So it's had some changes over the years, but the text was corrected or edited by that Samuel Cole Williams. So it went from Adair, who wrote it, and then it was edited by Samuel Cole Williams, but it spent a lot of time out of the American public eye. So this is from the My Jewish Learning, the website's at the bottom there. It says one of the first books to suggest that Native American lost tribe theory was written by a Jew, the Dutch rabbi, scholar, diplomat Manasseh ben Israel, the Hope of Israel. I've heard that title in conversation with other restoration people, the Hope of Israel, 1650. So he suggested the discovery of Native Americans, the surviving remnant of the Assyrian exile, was a sign heralding the Messianic era. Just 1 year later, Thomas Thorogood published his bestseller, Jews in America. And then the lost tribe idea found favor among early American notables, including Cotton Mather, influential English minister Elias Boudinot, a New Jersey lawyer who was one of the leaders of the American Revolution, and Quaker leader William Penn. I've heard the name Elias Boudinot and William Penn, but I didn't, and Cotton Mather, but I didn't know they had any connection to this theory. So the notion was revived after James Adair, a 40-year veteran Indian trader and meticulous chronicler of the Israelitist features of Native American religion and social custom, wrote this book that we're reviewing tonight. Even Epaphras Jones, an American Bible professor, engaged the theory in 1831, claiming that anyone conversant with the European Jews and Aborigines of America will perceive a great likeness in color, feature, hair, aptness to cunning dispositions for roving, ... So it was in the mindset observed the customs of certain tribes in the Southeast, that there was some familiarity with the biblical prescribed customs or ordinances. So this is from the flyleaf of the book. Published in London, 1775, printed in the United States, 1930 for the first time. So some time had passed between it being published in London and being printed in the United States. Detailed, fascinating account of the principal tribes of the Indians of the Southeast and their countries. It is regarded by ethnologists and historians as reliable authority on the Southern Indians as well as on Southern history. There's been some pushback after it came out, and people started saying, "Yeah, they're Israelites," and so they kind of critics kind of said it was a hoax. But this in 1930 said it's regarded by ethnologists and historians as reliable. A man of liberal education and persuasion, agent or trader under George the third, James Adairs, set out not only to write all he knew about the physical qualities, dress, and temper of the Indians, but also to prove his theory that the Indians were lineal descendants of the lost tribes of Israel. This descent, Adair writes, I shall endeavor to prove from their religious rites, civil and marital customs, their marriages, funeral ceremonies, manners, language, tradition, and a variety of particulars. Devoting the first half of his book to proving this theory, provides no less than 23 arguments that will astonish and fascinate the reader. In their common belief in Jehovah, the Indian Yohewah, Adairs says they pay no religious worship to sticks or stones after the manner of the old Eastern pagans, neither do they worship any kind of images whatsoever. He cites their common ideas of theocracy and the ministration of angels. Knowledgeable in the rudiments of Hebrew, he says the Indian language and dialects appear to have the very idiom and genius of Hebrew. Their words and sentences are expressive, concise, emphatical, sonorous, and bold, and often both in letters and signification synonymous with the Hebrew language. Other arguments include the counting of time, prophets, and high priests, festivals, fasts, laws of uncleanness, marriage, divorce, burial of the dead, choice of names, punishment, cities of refuge, purification, and ceremonies preparatory for war. Equally thrilling and informative is the second half of the book is dedicated to vivid individual accounts of the various Indian nations, followed by a general account of North American Indians. And then they plug the book. Adairs History of the American Indians is a rewarding experience that will delight both the general reader and the historians. Particular value is eloquently stated by James Adair himself in the preface of the book. Quote, one great advantage my readers here will have, I sat down to draw the Indians on the spot, had many of them years standing before me, and lived with them as a friend and brother. So the book, the one that I have with the red cover, is about 500 pages. So it's got some thickness to it, maybe 1.5 to 2 inches. And as I read, the first half of the book's about these 23 arguments, and the second half is about actually recording history. So this is the map from the inside the cover of, as you can see, the Southeast with Florida and the Carolinas, and this is called West Florida. That would be the Panhandle there today, and you can see small names. Here's Choctaw and Muskogee, Cherokee. So I find any others in there. Natchez. So all around this Mississippi River basin of Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. So he lived among and traded with them for 30 years. The flyleaf says 40 years, and I did the math and came up with 30 years. Starting in 1736, he started living with them in 1736 and wrote his account from 1761 to 1768. So the 5 tribes that he lived with and traded with are listed here. The Cherokee and their different spellings and different ethnonyms, what they called themselves and what they were called. The Catawba, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, and the Muskogee. Muskogee are now pretty much called the Creek, and it's because it was a late name because they lived by the creeks, the waterways. So this is a snapshot picture of the content page. And you can see the Roman numerals here adding up to 21, and then at the top of this page, 22 and 23. So I went through these and thought, what would be most interesting instead of covering all 23 in the short time that we have. So I wanted to dive in and give more information on the ones in blue. So we'll skip some of these others, even though they probably have a lot of merit. That maybe for another time, or you could buy the book and read it yourself or look at it online. I tried to buy one of them the other day, and it was like $20 with tax and shipping. But when I went back, it was the other versions were like $60 to $100. So the number 2, let me see. There's number 2. Okay, so the worship of Jehovah. Okay, so in Exodus 17, Moses built an altar and called the name of it Jehovah Nisi. And 2 Nephi 9 and Moroni 10, we have the word Jehovah. Adairs thought that this approximation, Yohewah, was it's very similar to Yehovah. So they also called their God Loakish To'olo, Abba, the great, beneficent, supreme, holy, spirit of fire, sole author of warmth, light, and all animal and vegetable life. So he's the great creator. He's the sole author of those things. I included the biblical passage that also these would connect with. If you're familiar with the word Torah, in Hebrew, it means instructions. It's also called the first 5 books of Moses, or the Pentateuch. So they have a similar sounding name to what a creator's name is in both the Bible and the Book of Mormon. So they had no idols. They paid no homages to dead persons, heavenly bodies, evil spirits, nor created any image. So reference Exodus 20 verse 4, commandment number 2, not to create any idols or bow down to them. When they dance in a bowing posture, they sing Hallelujah, Yohewah. Hallelujah, you probably recognize as praise Yah. When he was there, he said he personally saw 2 carved images, 2 carved eagles painted white facing the center of the Hedria, which is their one place in the village that they kept sacred and holy and clean and used on specific holy days. And the reference from Exodus 37 says there was cherubims that spread out their wing and covered the wings over the mercy seat. So their notions of theocracy, meaning God rules them, or he's their giver of government. Their deity is believed to the immediate head of their state. They call themselves the beloved people because their ancestors were under the immediate government of the deity and was present with them and directed them by the prophets, while the rest of the world were aliens and outlaws to the covenant. So they had kind of an arrogancy because they believed that their leader was the true deity, and he had given them men instructions. Speeches from their leaders urged them to remember their land, which flowed with milk and honey, was the result of keeping the customs and rites that was passed down from their predecessors. That God chose them out of all the rest of mankind as his peculiar beloved people. And then we have, I didn't put the book reference, 14:2. For thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God, and Jehovah has chosen thee to be a peculiar people unto himself above all the nations that are upon the earth. So they believed they were more connected with their God. Belief in the ministration of angels. They believed in a higher class of beings, higher regions to be inhabited by good spirits, holy people, and they had relations to the great Holy One. They said, as they believe in God, so they firmly believe that there is a class of higher beings than men and a future state of existence. So they believed that when they died, they went to another place where these where God was and where the higher class of beings also existed. You know, somebody said what the great white road, meaning the Milky Way. So they had prophets and high priests. All Indian nations, particularly Muskogee, have a most holy place partitioned off by a mud wall about breast high behind the white seat, which always stands to the left hand of the red painted war seat. There they deposit their consecrated vessels and supposed holy utensils. None of the laity or non-priesthood daring to approach that sacred place for fear of damage to themselves and general hurt to the people for the supposed divinity of that place. So, and we read in Numbers 18:7 that only the priesthood could go into the temple, and then only the high priest could go into the Holy of Holies on the Feast of Atonement. Only one at a time holds the priestly order. Again, only one high priest at a time, and he must be without defect. He can't be blemished in any way. This office that the Native Americans had, descends by inheritance to the eldest son. They were consecrated by having water purifying sprinkled on them, washing all their body and clothes clean, anointing them with oil, and offering a sacrifice. So these were the priestly class. And Numbers 19:7 also says that the Aaronic priesthood must do these things too. While making the yearly atonement of sin, the priest is dressed with a white buckskin reaching across his arms and tied in the back, and sits on a white buckskin and white beads. He's normally barefoot, and some with white moccasins, only worn for that particular ceremony. So the barefoot is the high priest went in barefoot. They had a breastplate of white conch shell, a wreath of white feathers adorned their head. And if you remember the high priest's dress and accoutrements, he had a golden head plate or crown that said "Holiness to the Lord" on it. Festivals, fasts, and religious rites. We compare them to the 7 holy days, festivals, or feast days of Leviticus 23. They have a fall harvest festival, which in Leviticus 23 is called Sukkot, tabernacles or booths, time of remembrance when Israel came out of Egypt and dwelt in these temporary dwellings for their 40 years in the wilderness. And so this fall festival that he observed, he said, the women dressed in their finest white, anointed with bear grease, entered the temple, clothed with new fruits, entered the holy ground in solemn procession, holding a small bundle of green branches which they place on the holy arbor. And so the directions in the Bible for building this sukkah or shade house is from Deuteronomy 26:2. The priest was dressed in white. He leads a circular sacred dance next to the holy fire, invoking Yah, yo, yo, hey, hey, wah, wah. So it's a doubling of the syllables of yo, hey, wah. The followers then join with hallelujah, hallelujah, and then hallelujah, hallelujah, until they encircle the altar. And that procedure is also mentioned in Isaiah 1, verse 18. They have an annual expiation of sin. So once a year, they have a ceremony that cleanses them completely from sin. It's at the beginning of the first new moon when their corn became full-eared. And that could relate to Passover in the spring or the Feast of Atonement in the fall. But they did have that ritual, that event, celebration, or rite to cleanse them from sin. Their word nitak ya'ah, the days of afflicting themselves before the deity, is what that translates from or to, at a prefixed time of a certain moon. Okay, so Numbers 29:7 describes how the Israelites and those that joined themselves to the God of Israel were supposed to afflict themselves on the 9th day, the evening of the 9th, before the 10th day, which was the Feast of Atonement. So they had a similar days of afflicting themselves before God. They had solemn fasting to purge them from sin on a particular holy day. And that happens also Leviticus 23:32. They had a daily sacrifice. They would offer the fattiest piece of meat to the holy fire before eating. And there, his words, quote, to produce temporal good things and avert evil. So they were following some kind of custom or guideline, statute, and perhaps they did so because of Leviticus 7:23, which it says, do not eat the fat. And they were supposed to burn the fat up on the altar of the sacrifice. Before eating any animal, they will offer the first whole kill of the year or pass it through the smoke of the holy fire, which has a connection to Ezekiel 44. The Muskogee sacrifice a piece of every deer they kill at their hunting camps or near their homes. When they're at home, they dip their finger into the broth and sprinkle on the tombs of their dead. Thought that was kind of interesting. The high priest was supposed to dip his finger in the blood of the sacrifice and then sprinkle that blood on the furniture to sanctify it. The part where it separates is they'd sprinkle the broth on the tombs of their dead. That particular practice I haven't found in the Torah or in the Bible. They believe their sins are the true cause of their evils. And they abhor prostitution of women and human or child sacrifice. Ezekiel 16 and Leviticus 19. So they have laws of uncleanness that correlate or are similar to the directions in the Torah. The separation of women during menstruation are called lunar retreats. They live in small huts at a considerable distance from their dwelling houses for that time period. That's from Leviticus 15. His quote from the book, horrid and dangerous pollution to those who touch or go near them or walk anywhere within the circle of their retreats, and are in fear of thereby spoiling the supposed purity and power of their holy ark, which they always carry to war. So if you're familiar with the Israelites carrying their ark into war, and sometimes incorrectly, that might relate. I went to, what do they call it? Sweat Lodge one time when we were living in Arizona as part of a college class, and they would not, that you had to stand outside the Sweat Lodge if you were, they said, on your moon. So when women were having their period, they were not allowed into that enclosure. After childbirth, women are absent themselves from their husbands and all public company. The Muskogee separate themselves for 3 moons or 3 months. That's kind of long. And that's from Leviticus 12. People with running issues or sores, for instance, from a wounded warrior, are deemed unclean and ordered apart to a small hut and confined there and visited by the prophet or divine physician invoking Yehovah. And that's prescribed in Leviticus 15. Those burying the dead become unclean for several days and be cleansed by some of their religious order, purifying themselves by ablution or a religious rite of washing the body. And that's exactly as described in Numbers 19:11, excuse me. So abstinence from unclean things. Spirituous liquors were described as, I will not drink, they are bitter waters of the great one. And Isaiah 24:9 calls strong spirituous liquors as bitter waters, which I thought was a neat connection. The birds of prey and birds of the night, such as the owl, are unclean and unlawful to be eaten, as well as amphibians and reptiles. And you'll find that list of clean and unclean and how to decide in Leviticus 11. They refuse to eat animals that have died of an animal that have died of itself or suspected it may have died of itself. So they won't eat those animals. Unclean animals can eat the dead and unclean animals. The unclean animals can eat them, but the people who ate of the flesh of the swine that fed on such polluting food would certainly become mad. So they didn't, at least these Adair did not observe these 5 tribes eating swine. Book says that over time they gradually became acculturated into the white culture and began eating swine. But when he encountered them in his time, he didn't see them eat pigs. If you have eaten swine or any unsanctified fruit, it excluded you from religious ceremonies. And that also is spoken about in Leviticus 11. So they do not consume the blood of any animal. The Torah instructions were to pour the blood on the ground like water, from Deuteronomy 12. And they had the practice of cutting out the lower part of the thigh of the deer. If you remember the story of Jacob, when he's escaping his uncle Laban, he wrestles with the angel and I guess throws his hip out of joint. And so the Jewish custom is to not eat that part of an animal. And here we see those tribes, they cut out the lower part of that thigh of the deer, which Adair thought was quite peculiar, that they would do this one thing that was just kind of strange. You know, why would you cut out that part of the deer and not eat it? I mean, what's wrong with it? So they have cities of refuge. Numbers 35:10, I quoted it here, but in particular, these in verse 12 here, where the green is, they called them cities of refuge for the avenger, so that the manslayer will not die until he stands trial. So if you accidentally killed somebody without premeditation, you could go to these cities in the land of Israel that were designated for asylum, so that you wouldn't be immediately killed. You had kind of a safe sanctuary place there. And so the Indian says, quote, "These Indian nations have either a house or a town of refuge, which is a sure asylum to protect a manslayer or the unfortunate captive if they can once enter into it." So if you can make it to your sanctuary city, and they knew which ones they were, they would be safe. Or at least they would get maybe due process. The Cherokee allowed their beloved town the privilege of protecting a willful murderer, and that's exactly how he spelled it, but they seldom allow him to return home afterwards in safety. So once you're in the town, you're there for the duration. Legend has it that in Israel, when you went into a city of refuge, town of refuge, that you were there until the death of the high priest. These designated and what they call peaceable towns, old beloved towns, ancient towns, holy towns, or white towns, seem to have been formerly towns of refuge. So another interesting similarity is from Deuteronomy 25:5. If you're familiar with the levirate marriage, if not, well, you will be. When brothers dwell together and one of them dies without a son, the widow must not marry outside the family. Her husband's brother is to take her as a wife and fulfill the duty of a brother-in-law for her. So if you remember the Old Testament story of Jacob, Judah, one of Judah's sons died, leaving the wife without a child. And so his sons did not want to perform this levirate marriage, and two of them died. And so the third one was too young, and so he postponed and sent her to her father for the duration. And eventually she contrives a scheme to disguise herself as a prostitute, and she has relations with Jacob. And eventually she gets pregnant with Jacob's son. Because they're worried it's going to happen. Judah's son, I'm sorry. Yeah, I misspoke. So these tribes, the eldest brother of the deceased can redeem the widow of their brother. And as he said, that some widows did not want to have relations with any particular brother, so they got the oldest male unable to perform by getting them drunk, and then they have the liberty to marry whomever she wanted. So you could say, well, yeah, he did the deed, but nothing came of it. So now I'm free to marry who I want. I don't have to marry this my brother-in-law. So that's 21 out of the 20. No, not 21. That's just a fraction of the 23 arguments that Adair points out in his book. And yeah, I wish I would have done more now that I realize I have more time left, but maybe we can have discussion that will fill up the time. So, implications and considerations based on this book. The critics responded that Adair fabricated his encounters, so he lied. Critics responded that the evidence is lacking for conclusion of actual Torah observance. This doesn't prove that. So just because these tribes are doing these things doesn't prove that they had any connection to understanding or knowing or continuing a knowledge of the Torah at any point. It's still unknown how these tribes acquired these particular peculiar customs. It does not prove that the tribe originated from the Book of Mormon peoples and may have been a complete separate migration. Speculation and legend do provide an attempt to explain the tribe's presence in the southeast of the United States and possible connections to the Hebrews of the Bible. And that's all I have.
Well, thank you, Rick.
Yeah. Oh, I should have numbered the slides, and then you could say, well, on slide such and so, but I could probably find the slide just based on your question. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. That's okay.
Very good. Yeah, let's let the people have a chance to participate.
Right.
And let me begin. I'm curious about the venison being. It seems to me like they may very well have been cutting the scent gland away and avoiding contamination of the meat with that odoriferous gland that most deer have.
Yeah, but they would have had to cut both of them, and they just did one side.
Oh, really? Well, so in your summation, if you would please,
Yeah.
what do you think? You're giving us an awful lot of parallel
Yeah.
information, and yet it appears that that for Book of Mormon advocates that they could use this to their own benefit and support.
Yeah.
However, there's a question about how authentic it is.
Yeah. It was seen in the 1930s as an authentic recording of history. And not only did Adair write about it, those other people that were listed at the beginning of the presentation, they also wrote about it. So either they were in cahoots or they actually observed what they said they did. As support for the Book of Mormon, it does support the Book of Mormon loosely. We don't have any real connection other than speculation and legend where these people came from. Were they actually Book of Mormon peoples? I mean, it does go to support that these people doing Hebrew Torah things were not where they belong. They were in the United States, Southeast United States, and they shouldn't belong there unless they migrated. So just the fact that they're there, I mean, if it's true and believable that they were doing these things and they're there, then how did they get there? And it must then posit that there was oceanic travel. If not the Book of Mormon people, then some other colony that we don't know about, perhaps.
Well, thank you for raising that possibility, but let's also consider the possibility that Jesus said he had other sheep that he was going to
Yes.
gospel
Yeah,
with.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know, I didn't read anything in the book about him visiting them, but you know, if you've read the book, He Walked the Americas, there's a lot of evidence across the United States of somebody that came and taught them that was not a man. Well, I shouldn't say not a man. He wasn't an earthly man. He was a
Okay,
heavenly man.
let's
Yeah.
open it up to the other people. I got my first question in, so let's give
Okay.
the other people a chance to raise your hand. We don't have Deb to keep things in line tonight, so I will try to, but I find myself a lot clumsier than she was at it. So wave or jump in. Stephen Schultz, please introduce yourself too, Steve, if you would, please. And unmute. There we go.
Okay, is that better?
Yes,
Yeah,
try that.
yeah.
Okay, coming through, Paul. Thank you. I currently live in Bradenton, Florida, but I spent 34 years in Independence, Missouri, and grew up in Michigan. Um, and I spent 3.5 years studying the Torah with Gary and Marcia Skinner.
Yeah.
That doesn't make me any expert, uh, but knowledgeable, and I still use it in teaching. I found it very fascinating. Some of these, parallels that are there. And I guess one question I might have is, even though it's been some 200 years since this was initially, put together, is it possible that, uh, any of the Indian legends or descendants would have any knowledge of some of these practices themselves as a more original corroboration of the book's authenticity?
Yeah. Um, yeah, that I don't know of any. In an effort to what do you call it? Redact or censure or whitewash the legitimacy of the Native Americans of being other than savages didn't get much attention. So they, from what I've read, they couldn't give them legitimacy as being civilized people because that would mean it was a bad thing then to push them off their land and to mistreat them. So I don't know of any ancestry records of people that, passed down, oral history. I have read the Princess Little Pigeon books that
Mhm.
where she describes a migration from the Southwest and where they followed a pole to some destination in the East. I don't remember what tribe she represented, but
Iroquois.
okay. And so the Iroquois was considered one of the, no, that's a Seminole. I don't know where the Iroquois were in that area geographically.
The Iroquois were way up north, and so it would not
Way
fit
up north. Okay. Okay. So she, I thought, was in the southeast. Um, and she talked about a migration of her ancestors and even to the point of the Serpent Mound being a memorial to the turtle people leading the snake people to where they were. Um, Usually it's now said there's a snake with an egg in its mouth, but she said originally that egg had arms on it and a head, and it memorialized that interaction between the snake people and the turtle people.
Okay, thank you for that. Uh, you put a lot of work into this. Are you keeping it proprietary, or
Oh
Is
no.
it better just to get the book?
Um, I would say get the book,
Okay.
or look or read it online at that link. I can go back to it, um, so that you can just click on it and read it. If you find when you're reading it on the line, like, man, I want to highlight this or make notes on the side or share it with other people, then you could buy the book. You could sample the online version for free, read it all for free, really. But the book has so much more, like oh, who's the language guy? Brian Stubbs, he's one, and the guy that did the characters, somebody with Hebrew, a lot of Hebrew knowledge, might be able to present on the language, the chapter that references the language similarities.
Hmm.
That could be developed. Trying.
Yeah, it seems like I remember at least one book that, has already done that.
Yeah.
And while you're looking, I just add that, migrations happened all the time. I'm in possession of a book called Prehistoric Copper Mining from
Oh,
Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
yeah.
And you've heard the story that the copper from the UP has a unique content of silver in it, and they found it traded all the way down to Mexico. So, the distances weren't that big of a problem in the big picture. But I
Well,
thank you for
yeah.
answering my question.
Yeah, I've read of that and seen like documentaries on that about how they could take almost pure lumps of copper out of the ground, and you go up into those places and there's copper mines, holes that go down in that were there when the white man came.
Yes, I've seen all of that, and it's true, and they still relate to that. But
Uh-huh.
it just kind of ties in. But your presentation was much appreciated.
Oh, well, you're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, you can share it once it goes on what do you call it? I think somebody was putting them on YouTube or that other collection.
Yes.
Okay.
And thank you, Steve, for joining us and being brave enough to participate. We welcome you to the forum. David
Thank you,
Casey.
Paul. We appreciate you too.
Well, please come back. We have a continuing dialogue here with unique perspectives every week. David Kaysen, unmute, please. And Monty will be next.
I think he's still muted, Paul.
I think we got him. Go ahead, David.
Mute
All right.
on me. Try it again. I'm just curious if I can get my question out before it goes off again. Are you aware of any of the Indians or the tribes today that are aware of any of these traditions or have received any of them or the practices, or are they completely foreign to the current tribes?
Well, I can't speak generally. I can speak from my experience. I went and visited the 39 tribes in Oklahoma 2 years ago, and had a great conversation with the Choctaw chaplain in Durant, Oklahoma, if I'm pronouncing the town right. Durant. But we spent 2 hours talking about the Book of Mormon and this book here, and he was unaware of it. And so he was so fascinated by it that I gave him the copy I had, thinking I could get another one shipped to me or come back home and get another one. But I really need to follow up with him to find out, what he thinks or what he concludes, if he has any background or support for these practices done among his people. So I think to answer your question, no. I I showed the book to people when I had more of an audience and more time, and so some of the tribes in Oklahoma are aware that this evidence exists.
Let me encourage you to review the presentations that we had from the Williston brothers from Little Eagle and Rainbow Eagle. They gave 2 sessions. The last one was last week to show parallels between the native traditions and the scriptures. And there are a number of parallels there that I think you'll find certainly compatible with what Rick has offered tonight, if not essentially the same.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Rick.
they wanted my the Williston, one of them wanted to contact me and talk about my presentation, the elements of my presentation, but I didn't hear from them. I was hoping they would be on the forum tonight so they could weigh in.
Yeah, me too. Well, but we have Monty instead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. On a humorous note, this was a movie, but this man Frank Ballou was very, very into trying to prove that the Native Americans were the lost tribe of Israel, and he was very disappointed in his Native American foreman of his ranch. And he said, you know, Jacob just doesn't agree with me at all. And he said, I had Rabbi Goldberg come down here and talk to him in Hebrew until he was blue in the face. And you know, Jacob stood there and acted like he didn't understand a word of it.
Oh, Indians are oftentimes good actors. Oh, that's fun. Thank you, Monty. Boyd, your hand is up, or Monty, you had anything more you wanted to add?
No, I just was trying to figure out how to shut this off here.
Okay, well, let's give Boyd a chance.
Let's see here.
Hey,
There
Rick.
we go.
Good presentation there, buddy. Remind me again, what was the tribes again that where all this was observed? I think you said Choctaw was one of them, and what was some of the others?
Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, Muskogee, and 4 out of 5. Is that a B? Is that a B? Chickasaw.
Greek.
Cherokee.
Let me go back without. I'm gonna kick myself when I find out what it was. Okay, Catawba.
Catawba. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
I didn't hear much about the Catawba, and I don't think the Catawbas are even represented in Oklahoma either. And they don't. Yeah.
Did they mention Edisto Indians at all?
Say that again, please.
Did they mention the Edisto Indians?
Oh, I've never heard of them. No.
Yeah, they're down in the southern part of South Carolina. They used to be.
Okay. I can look in if you would give me a spelling, I'll look in the index.
Yes, Edisto.
Edisto.
Edisto, yeah.
Okay. Maybe CD.
Edisto, yeah.
No, they don't say anything about the Edisto. Are they known by a different name? Like, is that their people name?
I'm not sure. I just know they used to inhabit that area.
Okay. Sometimes they got absorbed for defense purposes, or they might have got did they get like decimated? And are there any Edistos left?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know there's some Edisto people, they claim to be Edisto Indians, but I'm not entirely sure that's the original ones that
Oh, okay. Well, now
had the
they,
name.
yeah, now they have this federally recognized status that the government recognizes certain tribes that they didn't recognize before. You know, like if they, you can say, well, we lived in this area and we had, you know, our own language, and you know, then they're trying to get their members on the payroll, basically.
Hmm.
But that's neat. I'll have to look up the Edisto and where they went.
Okay.
That question about identification is an important one. For most of the First Nations peoples, recognize their clan identity as significant as tribal identity, and the American government only recognizes tribal identity. The clan identity, in actuality, at least as important, if not even more, uh, help to determine with whom one would marry and help establish the inheritance lines um, and all kinds of access to economic sources. My wife, as a Polynesian, is part of the Turtle Clan, and I have much deeper appreciation for the clan structure since the people of the Turtle carried the shell. Everything has a shell. Man shell is his woman. Woman's shell is her house. Her house has the shell of the trees over it. The trees have the shell of the clouds. The clouds have the sun, moon, and the stars that percolate the light down through all the other shells to the turtle, which is able to carry his shell around the world in the oceans and then ultimately comes swimming back home. And that idea of being able to return to my sweetheart in the Turtle Clan and be able to return to her as I swim back home at the end of this chapter in my life is an element of the clan concept that I think is largely separate from the tribal identification.
Yeah, when we lived with the Navajo, like 3.5 years, they had an introduction spiel that they would do about their their clan, who they were, what their clan was born for, and they had I didn't understand it. I never got a good lesson, but it kept them from marrying a close relation.
Right.
There was a comment or question in the chat. Do you want me to read it?
So go ahead, take care of it.
Okay. It says from Val, what denomination was the chaplain affiliated with, the one in Oklahoma? I don't remember, but it was a Christian denomination because it came lunchtime. I was there. I got there maybe 10 o'clock or so. And I visited him in the headquarters of the tribe, and a fabulous building that they have there. But I visited with him, like I said, about the Book of Mormon and about the connection of ancestors to the Torah. And then it was time for lunch, and his job as a chaplain was he offered a prayer that went out over all the speakers in this administration building. You know, it's like 6 stories tall. It's got a river running through the creek running through the middle of the building. And he prayed in the name of Jesus. So I don't think he was, I think he was a Christian believer in Jesus Christ, but I don't know what denomination he was. Does that help, Val?
Go ahead and jump in, Val, or anyone else for that matter. The floor is open.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It is. It took me a minute to get to my microphone. Certainly, addresses the question I had, Rick. So
All right. Yeah.
you don't know the answer to what his specific denomination was, but he was a Christian guy and he was interested in the Book of Mormon.
Uh-huh.
It's interesting that he would spend 2 hours with you talking about those kinds of issues.
Yeah. Sometimes my visits were lengthy. Like the very first visit I had in the Arapaho, Cheyenne Arapaho, they said, well, the president and the vice president have to be somewhere in 15 minutes. So you have 15 minutes with them. And I'm thinking, okay, how can I do this 15-minute spiel about a book that is so wonderful and get the point across? Well, 15 minutes turned into 30 minutes, turned into 45 minutes, turned into an hour, and then 2 hours. And they brought in not only the president, but the vice president, some other lady that can't remember what she did. They brought in the head of the casinos, and I got to tell the whole group about the Book of Mormon. And one of the vice president, his name was Gibb. He was a Bible student, and so he was quizzing me about how the Bible and how the Book of Mormon could exist in addition to the Bible. And then when that was over, they said, well, we're going to go to lunch. Come be our guest. So the meeting that they were going to go to in 15 minutes was going to the casino and eating lunch. So
Well, I have to say, if this is the first time they've heard about the Book of Mormon, we all have been doing a really poor job of missionary work. If Native Americans are only now for the first time hearing about the Book of Mormon.
yeah, that is a puzzling thing, because in my encounters in Oklahoma, I would talk to people that had other encounters with other denominations that were also busy in getting out the word. Like the people from Monongahela, Pennsylvania, they have a pretty big presence in towns. They took their whole church and divided it up into different missionary groups, and so they continue to have a relationship with different members of the tribe. They wrote that book. They promote that book, Indian Moses. I don't know if I can put my hand on it right away. American Indian Moses is what they call it. And so I would go and they'd say, do you know this George Kasich? And I said, no. Well, here's his book that he here's this book that he gave me. So I was in communication with that church and him for a while, and they make regular trips there. But yeah, I feel like the Book of Mormon, to the who it was from, has been neglected. And so if there's anybody interested in being involved, let me know.
So they have the Church of Jesus Christ, the folks in Monongahela, you're saying they're
Yeah.
well acquainted with them. Well, those folks are very strongly committed to the Book of Mormon. They would certainly give them a Book of Mormon message if they know them.
Yeah, Josh Geely was on here presenting before, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got a really powerful testimony of the Book of Mormon.
Uh-huh. My focus, my method was to not connect the church by any strings to the Book of Mormon. I wanted the Book of Mormon to be a standalone book, and if they would read it, that God would tell them what he wanted them to do for the next step. So I went no strings attached. I wasn't supported by any church organization.
I spent 2 years in the 1970s on the Navajo Indian Reservation.
Wow.
And we had in the city of Window Rock at that time,
10
sets of elders.
Yeah.
City of 5,000 people. It had the highest per capita missionary penetration in the world at that by far. So the Navajo Indian Reservation, at least, was a burned over district for preaching the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, burned over. Yeah, there was a small restoration branch in Pinon, Arizona, which is northwest of Window Rock. Well, pretty much everything's northwest of Window Rock. And it had kind of fallen into disuse, and so we tried to support those people there and have a pick them up and bring them to church, have a meal, have preaching, and then bring them home, and then regular visits, but it's so remote out there that it takes you an hour to get anywhere easy. It took us an hour to get to the church where the building was, that we would pick up members along the way.
I was in Chinle, and we had a set of elders out in Pinon in the 1970s.
Okay. Yeah. I worked in Chinle. That's where the school was, middle school was that I worked. And then we lived like 14 miles north of there in a town called Window Rock. No, not Window Rock, Many Farms. Many Farms, Arizona. Yeah.
Yeah, it said of elders there too. So, all those there, everybody on the reservation has encountered the Book of Mormon there, I'm sure.
Yeah. Maybe they're church shy, like a dog gets gun shy. Every week or every month, there's another organization coming in to present their bottle of truth. And the sad part is I've heard them say, yeah, whenever a church comes into the area, we have everybody baptized because we want to make sure we're baptized in the right church.
That too was sort of typical. They were incredibly spiritual people, but they were open to all kinds of spiritual teaching, and not given to necessarily committing to any particular principle.
Yeah, it would have to be hard to be raised in, what, like I was raised Catholic. And so for a number of years, I was taught that the Catholic way was the right way. And, they're taught that their traditional ways are the right ways. And in my travels, I encountered people that were, fully Baptist or Methodist, Christian religions, and then I encountered some that were Native American religion, and they said, that the white man's religion, how many splits does it have? You can't count it. But the Indian religion doesn't have any splits. So they preferred the Indian religion over the white man's religion.
You probably did encounter LDS presence there on the reservation, didn't you, in your time there of 3 years?
Yes. Yeah, we did. We where we lived in Many Farms, there was an LDS bishop that was in Chinle. If you went there, they had the really grand building, LDS building there, church there, and one of my co-workers belonged to that membership, that stake or whatever you call it. Yeah, that church. Yeah. And where we lived, there was members there, and we would have Bible studies, Book of Mormon studies. Occasionally, invite them over and sit down with. They had their Book of Mormon, I had mine, and the numbering's different, but we had those conversion books. So, yeah, it was fascinating to talk to people that were really anti white man. And how the white man came in and ruined everything that they had, and you wonder as you leave, were they going to stab you in the back? But I didn't get a lot of response from that trip, but I did get peace of mind that I did what I felt like I was told to do, and had some really good encounters. But I'm just have to be patient that the Lord's timing is better than mine, and that they have within their hands the Book of Mormon.
Rick, you have made very clear that that the Book of Mormon is paramount scripture for you, and yet your relationship to the Smith Rigdon spectrum is not quite clear, and if you would like to clarify that, I think it might be useful for our participants.
Well, I'd have to go back into it. When you first mentioned that in my bio, was it 2 years ago, maybe? I wasn't sure what it was. So I can't really answer what it is coming out of the Catholic Church and that doctrine, and then coming into being introduced to the Book of Mormon and reading that. I'm not real clear on what the Smith-Rigdon tradition was. The church history part, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. There's people, that know church history, like you and your archaeological dig. I don't know where the church went from this point to that point, and the persecution they suffered and all that. I cannot recite that. So I don't know what that Smith-Rigdon tradition is.
Okay, well, let me just rephrase that then. The overall spectrum of Mormonism.
Uh-huh.
Or Christianity, for that matter, because you were Catholic.
Yeah.
And to be a Catholic with belief in the Book of Mormon is a little bit extraordinary.
Well, God has his mysterious ways. I wasn't a good Catholic much anyway, but I had aspirations to be a priest.
Is your current affiliation Restoration Branches?
It's a restoration, but I don't attend any of the branches.
Okay.
I'm a Sabbath keeper because I can't find any real scriptural evidence that the Saturday Sabbath was ever changed. So some might call me Messianic or Hebrew roots. And so biblically, I go back to the Torah and Leviticus 23 for my annual holy days. You probably know Passover and the list of scriptures or list of holy days after that. 4 in the spring that have been fulfilled with the coming of Jesus, and there's 3 in the fall that have yet to be fulfilled.
Hey, Monty has had his hand up. Your turn, sir.
Are you saying that you're a Saturday saint?
Yeah. A Saturday Chatterday saint.
Well, you're certainly welcome to this forum.
I have literally been in awe of the LDS efforts to get the story of the Book of Mormon out there.
Yeah.
And I mean, we may have areas of disagreement, but on that, I think these guys are batting 1,000. And it must be interesting to listen to some of the testimonies of these people coming back from their journey as a evangelist. But,
yeah, Scott Forsyth spoke at the round table last week, and he said, or this Sunday of this week, he said that the Book of Mormon they've translated into 115 languages. So, like Paul was saying, who doesn't have the Book of Mormon by now? Basically, it's just a matter of something happening for the Book of Mormon to get to have its day.
There is one oddity. The one language that the LDS Church doesn't publish the Book of Mormon in is Hebrew.
Right. Huh.
So the only way they can get the Book of Mormon in Hebrew is with the Community of Christ translation of it, and that they have translated in Hebrew many years ago, but for political reasons, because we have BYU Idaho or BYU in Jerusalem.
Yeah,
we can't be seen to do any proselytizing of Jews.
Right.
And that's why they don't publish it in Hebrew. But it's really a tragedy that we haven't published it in Hebrew with a really good scholarly translation. That could be the most interesting translation of all, if it was carefully done to try to capture maybe some of the original Hebraism that's inherent in the Book of Mormon.
Right. There's, who was it? The Skinners. And I can't think of her name now. Did a lot of Hebrew study, and if I'm not sure, people, the common person, like maybe the Native American and Cherokee, for instance, saw that there was a strong Hebrew connection. I don't know that that would influence them or excite them, unless their language similarities would line up, and they could say, wow, maybe that, I don't know, keep praying for the Lord's hand to work. I mean, we've been waiting how long now since the Book of Mormon? See, 1830, 1930, almost 200 years. But he says the Book of Mormon coming forth was a sign that he was soon going to redeem his people. But I would find it exciting to join, my Native American brothers in New Jerusalem. My biological brother married a woman that was half Choctaw. Her father was full Choctaw. He was the president of the Kansas City Indian Club for a while. And I shared with her the Book of Mormon, but she was not interested, which kind of hurts. But you can't, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting the book that you consider to be important.
Not even Jesus himself could get to everybody.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think there's a drought of Book of Mormon. When I was Catholic, I knew nothing of the Book of Mormon. And so when someone shared it with me, and told me to read the section where Jesus comes back, when Jesus comes to Bountiful, I didn't have any bias against it. Catholic Church didn't have a lecture series on, the evils of additional scriptures. And so I didn't reject it, and that seems to be what happens right out of the gate when you mention the Book of Mormon. It's not given a chance. I mean, I visit with a Baptist pastor at a church nearby here, and he's got awful things to say about Joseph Smith. And I just tell him he can say, yeah. I tell him,
really?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that people tend to expect so much, a perfect individual and stuff like that. And he was just a man like everybody else, that he's not responsible for our expectations of him.
Right. And you bring up what Moses did, what Solomon did, what David did, and yet we still read their books. But I say the Bible comes in the back door for familiar friends and guests, or familiar friends, and the Book of Mormon has to come in the front door of scrutiny and examination and criticism. So if we were raised with the Book of Mormon and somebody tried to present the Bible to us, we might balk at that too, other than if we'd read the Book of Mormon and it says that there's the words of the Jews, then we might have some openness to other books.
Okay,
But,
Rick, you got some more questions.
Yeah.
Boyd, I think's next.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry
Oh,
I've been looking for the speaker that we had, who I was working on a publication of the Hebrew Book of Mormon. I failed to find the name,
yeah.
but somewhere we had one that gave us information that that Hebrew edition is underway.
Yeah, he's calling it the Stick of Joseph, as that was
That's
his.
one. That's the one. That's the
Oh,
top one.
that's right.
I
Yeah.
can't remember his name, but that's this.
Well,
I got this one, but I don't, this is an older one. It's not the one that presented a year or so ago.
Yeah, I'll get it here in a minute.
okay. Well, good. All right, let's proceed then. I
Yeah.
think I think Boyd may have been next.
Oh, Rick, you were down there at Canyon de Chelly area.
Yes, yes, yep. My the back of my classroom looked right out into the canyon.
You remember the part of the canyon where, I don't know if you noticed this, but I had someone tell me about this, and I was paying attention to it. When you're looking from that lookout, you're looking across the valley, and you see a
Yeah.
little village down there,
Yeah.
and you'll see some toe holds that climb up where someone can climb up the steep area,
Right.
and goes up to a ledge.
Yeah.
Then it goes off to the right, and then you can see a stack of rocks there where someone would go there every morning and every night to offer their prayers.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever see that?
You think it was an altar?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen altars all over the West out there, but I mean, that's impressive to me to be able to make that trip every day. I forget how many feet that is. So it's 600 feet or whatever it is, but to
Yeah.
go up that canyon wall and to that ledge, and then go over there to offer their prayers every morning and every night, took some dedication.
Yeah, White House Ruin is at the bottom of Canyon de Chelly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we went down there several times. It's if you go down, if you walk down, you ought to walk back up. Because we went down one time and knew one of the tour guides that was driving one of those half-track machines, the cars that would bring tourists in. He said, "Hey, I'll give you a ride back out of the canyon." And so we rode back out of the canyon in his vehicle, and then our legs killed us the next day. We thought next time we go down, we need to make a point to go right back up and stretch the other side of the leg.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Yeah, a lot of those places are built in such precarious places that you wonder, archaeologists and people, sociologists or anthropologists have wondered why they built their buildings so away from attack or invasion. Who are they afraid of?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you know about Canyon de Chelly?
I used to live out there.
Oh, okay.
Well, not there, but I used to live up in the Four Corners area up in Blanding, Utah.
Okay.
And so I've been down to Canyon de Chelly.
I was going to say the people that were building their houses, the ancient Pueblos that were building their houses on the canyon wall, were afraid of the Navajos, because the Navajo name for them is Anasazi, which means the ancient enemies.
Uh-huh.
So that the Navajos were attacking them, and they weren't all that friendly with the Hopi either. They had a dispute over land that was decided in favor of the Hopi when I was living there.
Yeah, if the Hopis were generous, they would build a Navajo a typical American house anywhere outside of Hopi land if they had to relocate a Navajo family. So they called them Hopi houses when you didn't have a Hogan. If you saw a Navajo family living in a rectangular house with a gabled roof, it was a Hopi house, one that Hopi built for the Navajos so that they could get them off of their land. And they would go to court over whether the Navajos had encroached on their land.
Tyson has his hand up.
Yeah, David.
Yeah, I just wanted to share with you when you made your remark about the Sabbath, just to let you and everybody else know that we Strangites still celebrate Saturday as the Sabbath.
Hooray!
And we've been doing it since 1859.
Well, good for
But I
you.
just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah. I guess you get a lot of pushback if you study with what do you call them? Protestant Christians, Sunday keepers, first day keepers. That's good. You've kept that going for so long. We just started observing the Sabbath about how long? Since my wife says 1999. So that would be about 25 years. Are you still there, David?
Well, thank you, David, for adding that comment, because we certainly appreciate having the Strangite representation here.
Strangite. Where are the Strangites located? Concentration.
Michigan primarily.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
My question was where the Strangites have headquarters or concentration of members.
Burlington, Wisconsin.
Burlington, Wisconsin. Is that where you are, David?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The old name was Voree, which was the Mormon name for the area. It was Voree.
Oh.
But Burlington, it's south of Milwaukee.
And David, we haven't heard from Bill Shepherd for a while. His wife is in hospice. Any news?
Not good. She's they're expecting her to go on a long trip in any time, and Bill is deteriorating quite rapidly. I mean, his mind and everything is good, but of course the body is starting to wane a little bit. But he's been so worried about his wife and everything, and they've now put her in a home, which may give him some relief, because he was trying to take care of her all the time. But it's not good.
I can identify with him in that need for primary care for your spouse. It's a tough assignment, and yes, it does take it does tax one. And so, yeah, I've been concerned, but thank you for that report. And we should continue to pray for him and his wife and family.
Okay, I'll let him know. Thank you.
Please do.
So that Hebraic presentation was by Adrian Larson, and his website is www.thestickofjoseph.com, and that's what he's trying to, I guess, back translate the Book of Mormon into the Hebraisms. So
Thank you. I failed to find it.
So Paul, that spreadsheet I send out every week has all of them on it. You can just search down through there, and there it is.
That's the efficient way. I look at my old handwritten notes trying to find things that way. And I knew it was in there someplace, but I haven't come up with it. But now that you mentioned Adrian Larson, that is the correct name, I'm sure. So thank you. I appreciate your helping to organize things for me. Any other comments or questions for this evening for Rick?
Yeah, Rick, I got a couple. One, I'm in Oklahoma, so I hate that you had to come down here and do the work that we're not getting done. And, but I do appreciate the work. I was a beneficiary of the Church of Jesus Christ coming to Oklahoma, and they came to my home, and we went to I went tagged along with them as they preached in a couple of missions. It was actually fascinating. But they're, as you said, Paul, they're actually taking that serious of trying to push the Book of Mormon into the Native American, even though they're having difficulty too. But they've got a program, and they're making an effort. So it was kind of neat to do. But I wanted to tell you, Rick, I haven't seen you in a while until just recently. And I used to just think I couldn't, as we drag on here a little longer, think I can't end my night until Rick asked his question. So whenever you would ask your question, whatever it would be, so you do have some very good questions for the forum that are worth answering. So I appreciate that. I'm glad to see you back.
Thanks, Roger. Sometimes I don't mean to be a thorn, but I don't like doctrine that's not based on the Book of Mormon, because it means so much to me. And so if God gave it to us to follow, then I think we ought to keep a hold to it. So what part are you in you're in like Central, if I remember right, like near Stillwell? Stillwater, yeah. My neighbor just moved from Stillwater. And she's part Cherokee. But Cherokee has really been assimilated.
Yeah, I actually have Choctaw and Cherokee if you look deep into the roots, but there's not any
So
membership type level.
Yeah. I told you my sister-in-law is half Choctaw. Her completely white mom was helping natives get research their lineage so that they could get membership into a particular tribe. And so she would give classes at the community college to help people. And she said one of the sad things is at one point in history, they didn't, they recorded the Dawes, people on the Dawes roll, DAWES. And she said it was better at that time to claim that you were black than to claim that you were Native American. So when you claimed that you were black, you just ended your claim that you were Native American. And so people legitimately with Native American heritage can't get the benefits that the government has available to them.
Doesn't DNA give them any kind of recourse at this point? DNA test?
Yeah, that's a really good question, but that would be one way to determine it, but they don't do it. They don't research it or prove it or verify it that way. They use blood quantum, which is, okay, I go to my mom and dad, and then I go to their mom and dad and their mom and dad. And then that fractionates my concentration of Native American blood.
Well, that would be necessary for some people because they might have a genealogical line that is Native American, but not necessarily have that much Native American DNA, depending on how it broke out, because there's a chance element to it. But anybody that's got provable Native American DNA has Native American ancestry, even if they at one point their ancestors claimed to be black or whatever.
Yeah, like for instance, Roger, if he did like a DNA test, 23andMe or Ancestry.com, it would certainly show that he had a certain percentage of that found blood DNA marker that is characteristic of, what did you say, Choctaw and Cherokee? Yeah. So they could say, well, you're so much percent Choctaw and so much percent Cherokee. And then if he wanted to, the tribes would have to establish a minimum amount in order for you to be on the membership. And as far as I know, they haven't done that. But I think that would be a good way to do it now that we have that resource. People that really have that DNA could get the benefits that the government has allowed them or benefited them. Yeah. Monty.
Yeah, Monty, you got your hand up again.
Yeah, I heard somebody make a snide remark that somebody wanted to prove their ancestry so they could get their share of the casino.
Well, that's not a bad reason. Um, yeah, the casino brings in a lot of money, and I wonder how much. I hear that some casinos are going broke, because gambling once that was about one of the closest places you could go to gamble. But now, where do we find gambling?
Yeah.
Everywhere. We've got how many casinos here in Kansas City? Um, riverboat casinos, air quotes, because they're not boats and they would never float. But so now I don't have to go to Prairie Band. I don't have to go to Nebraska to gamble. I could just go down to the boats.
Just turn your phone on.
Yeah. Yeah, I could do sports betting.
You can lose a house, real quick.
Yeah.
Turn your phone on.
Yep. So you don't have to go to the Indian run casinos to lose your money anymore. But I learned while I was on those trips talking to people that they are taking that casino money and buying up their ancestral lands. And so on those ancestral lands, they don't have federal government restrictions. But there was a lot, what I learned talking to cultural leaders of the tribe, that there was so much scattering going on. There's a North Band, a South Band, a Mexico Band. There's still some residual bands in the East that never went on the long walk, the Trail of Tears. And that was hard for me to wrap my head around, because I want a neat little box, and they're just scattered, and now they're gradually getting back together.
Again, the presentation by the Willison brothers speaks of that getting back together.
Yeah.
I've been so pleased to have their presentations, because they have helped us to better conceptualize the healing of the sacred hoop. I spent the summer of 1969 at the Northern Arizona University, and had the chance to spend some time at Chinle and on both the Navajo and the Hopi reservations, and was deeply touched by the association and friendships developed there. Just what a to see the cornfields that the Hopi were planting and caring for, hand watering, and I grew up on a farm in Iowa, and the idea of hand watering in a cornfield was just extraordinary to me. I spent some time with a Sunday school kind of program, trying to provide entertainment for the kids. And one of the things I learned with the Hopi, that when I tried to run a relay, to have them divided into teams and then run and carry a spoon with a cotton ball on it, or a spoon with ping pong ball on it, and run it to the other side, then run it back again, and see which team could get there first. I found that the kids quickly discovered that if you lick the spoon, you can make the cotton ball stick to it, and they passed that information on. So one would get to the other side, and they would wait until the other had got there, so that way they could run together and not try to beat each other, because they preferred to cooperate rather than to compete. It was a good lesson for me. Why not learn to cooperate instead of compete?
This has been a good 30 to 40 years ago, but I was down in North Kansas City, and I was working on some ops equipment, and the young man I started talking to was an attorney, and he was also a Native American, and he made it his mission to keep an eye on the BIA and watch out for people that kind of fell through their cracks. He grew up in a split home. His father died of cirrhosis of the liver, his father's father died of cirrhosis, and great grandpa died of cirrhosis, and I guess the tribal life at that time was very, very depressing. Well, his mother, who was white, took him and put him in white schools and took him to a white neighborhood to live. And the tribal council tried to bring a lawsuit against her to have him brought back to the reservation. And he said, at that time I was 14 years old, and so they let me testify on my own behalf at the trial, and the judge was rather saddened by my attitude, but I had to explain it to him. He said the tribal elders are afraid you're going to lose sight of your heritage, and I told him I know what a beer can looks like.
Well, thank you, Monty, and thank you all. We are a 9:45 in Central Time, and some of us have work to do tomorrow. And so I wish to thank you all for your participation, and Rick, especially I thank you for presenting your unique perspective. I think that we need these unique perspectives in order to appreciate the remarkable variations there are in ways that can people embrace the Book of Mormon. And yours is so emphatic. I'm pleased to have you present. Good night, the Lord is watching o'er you. Good night, his blessings go before you. Good night, and we'll be praying for you. So good night, may God bless you.
Good night, everybody. Love y'all.
Good night.